Hello, everybody. Welcome to Blog Talk Radio, the Sales Professional Network, TSPN. I am your host, Andre Harrell. This is Blog Talk Radio's first and only show dedicated to the needs of the sales professional. And regardless of the industry that you're in, if you're in the sales business, this channel and show is just for you. We do focus on topics that are relevant to all industries, and the commonality is that we in the sales business as sales professionals face similar challenges each and every day. And TSPN, the Sales Professional Network, sincerely really was designed to create a forum where we can all come together and discuss these challenges and come up with some solutions and best practices to meet those challenges. This show tonight is brought to you by AH Square and Beyond Consulting. That's AH2 and Beyond.com, delivering beyond our clients' expectations in sales strategies, marketing, and sales training. AH Square and Beyond. Increasing your competency means increasing your sales results. Hey, if you've had the opportunity to listen to last night's show, I say welcome back. Thanks for checking out tonight's show and I guess getting my thoughts on the subject of the customer from hell and how to manage it. If you did not check out last night's show, I think it really would be worth your time, and I promise you will not ask for that time back in your life. It was a very good show, and I want to just take a moment to thank Scott Juba, who is the sales consultant, sales professional, business owner, and entrepreneur extraordinaire. I thought Scott did an outstanding job. His enthusiasm last night and his passion on the subject was infectious, and he raised some solid points regarding how to deal with the tough customer. And again, if you have not listened to last night's show, it's in the archives on Blog Talk Radio, the Sales Professional Network, or you can see it or hear it in iTunes to get Scott's thoughts. You know, my thoughts on dealing with tough customers begins first with the realities of being in the sales business. You know, selling for a living or being in the sales business is tough business. I think that's not new news to most of you who are in the sales business, and I'm sure many of you can kind of co-sign on that. But what I mean by tough, and please hang in there while I hang with me, I guess I should say, while I explain this. As a sales professional, you go into the beginning of any interaction with a customer, and if it's the first time calling on that customer, thinking this conversation could either go left for bad or right for good. And I think your most successful salespeople always try to mentally prepare to go right for the good in that interaction. But there's always that little voice as a sales professional in your head that this conversation or interaction with the customer can easily go left for bad, depending on what? The reaction and the behavior of the customer. You know, but our job as sales professionals is to really prepare for both. And I thought Scott did a really good job again last night encapsulating the importance of doing your homework or pre-work on that customer prior to meeting with them. So what makes it a tough job as a sales professional is really the unknown from the perspective of the customer. Now, from a customer standpoint, and we've all been customers, okay, so if you're a sales professional listening to the program tonight, you've been a customer yourself, your immediate reaction when you're approached by a salesperson is what I call the subconscious lock. Subconsciously, because of the perception salespeople have in the eyes of a customer, and I talk about that in that perception in detail if you go and check out my show on People Do Not Want to Be Sold. So if you hadn't had a chance to listen to that show, you can go in the archives in Blog Talk Radio and listen to that show in its full entirety. But the subconscious thought for the customer is, I'm not going to unlock my subconscious perception of this salesperson until they can convince me that they're truly here to help me. Until then, I'm not opening that subconscious lock. The problem comes when that subconscious lock manifests itself consciously into the outer aberrant behavior by the customer, thus the customer from hell, okay, if you got all that. So on last night's show, we didn't really get into specifics on what types of behaviors some customers exhibit during their interactions with sales professionals. The obvious are the more disrespectful, the out-of-bounds behavior where you as a salesperson, are saying to yourself, this business relationship cannot continue. However, there are passive-aggressive types of behaviors, and those include not keeping appointments, being overly vague as the customer, or just bottom line, avoiding just saying no. And we've all had those type of customers who are just, they're very nice. No, don't get me wrong. They're nice customers, and heck, we enjoy visiting them and just having, good social amenities conversation with them. But when it comes down to conducting business, there is this, avoidance or indifference type of behavior that immediately comes into the interaction from the customer. I'm sure all of you who are out there that sell for a living understand exactly what I'm talking about. And a side note to my customers out there, as a customer, if you're not interested in the services being sold by the sales professional, I find the best thing to do is just say no. You're not interested. It's not personal. And I'm hoping most sales professionals out there would not take it as being personal. It's just business. And that lies the problem, because people not expressing sincerely and respectfully the no word, what typically happens when that carrot is dangled by the customer who has no intention, okay, let me repeat, who has no intention on buying, guess what the salesperson continues doing? They continue selling. And probably, for the most part, most salespeople start to become a bit more aggressive in their approach because they can feel and identify the indifference the buyer is portraying. And once that aggressiveness sets in by the sales professional, the customer feels pushed, thus their attitude changes, and the whole interaction relationship between the salesperson and the customer deteriorates. This entire episode could have been totally preempted if the customer earlier on would have just said the proverbial no and and provided the salesperson with the option to move either to another alternative or solution, but not really letting the salesperson know right up front that you have no intentions on buying their product and just kind of dangling the carrot really inflames probably a situation and an interaction that's going to be negative. That doesn't have to be. Now, not letting my sales professionals off the hook. I do not want to do this. We just talked about the role of the customer, and I do not want to let my brethren, the sales professionals, off the hook, because there's a wealth of responsibility and accountability that falls in the lap of the sales professional. Sales professionals, when dealing with the customer from hell, quote unquote, you have to be more diligent in terms of your observations of that relationship. And what I mean by that is, at what point does the interaction stop being productive? Okay, let me repeat that. And what point does the interaction stop being productive where it's entirely focused on the negativity or absence in the business relationship? As we talked about, there's no place for abusive, hostile, disrespectful language by either party in a given interaction. And the answer to that is clear: cease and desist. If there's a situation where there's abuse, if there's a situation where there's just hostile, again, just disrespectful language in the interaction on the part of the customer, I'm here to say just cease and dismiss. And I like Scott's point last night when he said, look, I'm grown. I'm an adult. Treat me with some respect. We're both not children here. So that's clear. On the other hand, and we talked about this later on into the show last night, there are more subtle things that we've already examined that customers do that drives us crazy as sales representatives and professionals. And I would contend that's where our skill level should be taken to the next level. And it's that, again, that passive aggressiveness. The point where the customer is really vague. They probably have no intention on buying, but they're not telling you no either. And that frustrates the heck out of all of us. And again, I know those of you who are listening out there who sell for a living understand exactly what I'm talking about. But on the sales professional's point of view and side here, there are fundamentals to selling, one of which is the ability to effectively ask questions, probe, and the big one is to listen to what your customers are telling you. However, there's one attribute that needs to be utilized by the sales professional when dealing with a difficult customer, and that is confidence. Again, confidence, not arrogance, not ego, not hubris, but confidence, as my dogs, as you can hear in the background, agree. But the confidence is knowing when to look in the customer's eyes and say, hey, you are not interested in this product. You do have concerns about this product. I have not addressed your needs regarding this product, etc. A lot of problems some sales professionals face is that inability and that passivity to come across as aggressive. And I apologize, folks. I'm having some problems with my dogs here. But the most skillful salespeople, if they have anything else, it's confidence. Confidence to uncover why the customer isn't buying. Confidence, I might add, experience along with that confidence to know when to walk away from the business. If it's going to jeopardize other opportunities, that has to be the key. If it's going to jeopardize other business, that has to be with the likely buyers. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're spending all of your time dealing with the customers that are indifferent, that are passive-aggressive, that really just have no intention on buying, and you're spending weeks, months with that customer, it's probably a good idea to just cut bait. Because what you're doing is you're taking your time and attention away from those customers who are probably going to be buying customers for you. So it's that confidence in knowing when can I just cut and run from that customer, or cut bait from that customer. But one of the biggest challenges, again, for that customer is really knowing at what point do I say, okay, I have to move on. This customer, while they're a very important customer to my business, they're a very important customer to my company, they're a whale, so to speak, but they're not giving me the business. And my interaction with them is not favorable in terms of understanding what their true needs are, and them having them in return telling me their honest opinions about my product. It's not there. So I need to just cut bait and move on. The challenge is, when do you do that? And I don't have the time or like the day or the month when you do that, but you need to know in that situation, when is the right time to cut bait? Is it 4 months? Is it 5 months? Is it 6 months? Whenever. You need to know when the perfect time is to do that so you can spend more time, again, on those potential customers where you think you are going to get the sell. Okay? And I know this is sacrilegious. Somebody, who's been selling all my entire life. I know that sometimes walking away from the business, it's sacrilegious. You never want to do that. And every company whose major priority is to sell a product will tell you, you can't walk away from a customer. But I think many are starting to come around and saying, you know what, there are times when you have to do that. You have to do that and really start focusing your time and energies on those customers where you can drive your business. Which brings me to my final point in this whole conversation, and that is one word: respect. There is an old saying, and one I'm sure your mom told you growing up, and that is, to get respect, you have to give respect. And that statement says it all. As sales professionals, we have to be better listeners, observationists. We have to demonstrate confidence, and of course we have to show respect. As customers, sales professionals are there just to do their job. They're there to do their job. But that doesn't mean you as a customer should relinquish your standards of them. It's important that there's respect on your end as a customer, which is truly needed and truly wanted. Because I'll guarantee you, if you provide respect to your sales representative, to your salesperson, you'll get respected back in twofold. So the word respect, I think, is an absolute glue that'll bring both parties together for a positive, productive business relationship. That's extremely important. So in just wrapping up all of my thoughts, it is that one word of respect. Customers need to provide it. Sales representatives need to provide it. But also, it needs to be provided by both in order to make that interaction a positive one in a business situation or a business relationship. Okay? Those are my thoughts. Again, tonight's show has been brought to you by AH Square and Beyond Consulting. That's AH2 and Beyond.com, delivering beyond our clients' expectations in sales strategies, marketing, and sales training. AH Square and Beyond. Increasing your competency means increasing your sales results. On the lines of dealing with tough customers, what we do as a consulting firm, we work with companies to kind of identify, not only profiling, not only doing customer segmentation and identifying potential customers for a given company that we're working with, but how do you deal with those kind of customers? Whether they are the tough customers, whether they're indifferent customers, how do you identify those customers? And then once you identify those customers, how do you interact with them? And that's what our consulting company does that. So if you're having difficulties with that, if your sales force or salespeople are having difficulties with that, please contact us. We have training programs, we have leadership programs, we have development programs to help them understand how to interact in the most favorable way with their customer. And guess what? How that customer is going to interact with them favorably as well. You can contact us at AH Square and Beyond Consulting. That's AH2 and Beyond.com. And our number is 267-221-8800. 267-221-8529. Again, our number is 267-221-8529, and that's AH Square and Beyond Consulting, AH Square and Beyond.com. And that's our consulting company. Please contact us. Next week's show, I got a little fumbled there. I apologize. Next week's show, which will be next Tuesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be examining how to be an inspirational sales leader. You know, at the beginning of starting this whole network, the Sales Professional Network, one of my beginning shows was how do you inspire a sales team during tough times? Well, next week show is going to be looking inward as you as a sales leader. How can you personally develop your skills and your acumen to be an inspirational sales leader? You won't want to miss this show. If you have the responsibility for a sales team or a sales organization, we'll walk through the steps and help you be a better inspirational sales leader. So again, you don't want to miss that show. It's next Tuesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, the Sales Professional Network, we meet every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And oh, by the way, I do want to remind everybody that's listening tonight that the Sales Professional Network is also on iTunes. So if you haven't had the chance or you hadn't had the, ability to view the shows and listen to the shows on Blog Talk Radio, you certainly can review the shows on iTunes as well. Just kind of punch in the search engine, the Sales Professional Network. You'll see our logo. Pull it up, and you'll see all the list of our shows. And we're very excited about being on iTunes because it gives us better reach. And with that, if you like tonight's show, if you listened to last night's show, and even if you've listened to previous shows on the Sales Professional Network and you really like the shows, what I ask, and I'm closing you as a sales professional, is to please tell your friends, constituencies, colleagues, that there is a program formed just for them called the Sales Professional Network. Regardless of the industry you're in, we're not industry focused. We want to bring all sales professionals to the table and really talk about challenges that we have to deal with, all of us, regardless of the industry, again, on the same level playing field. You know, things such as like tonight, dealing with a difficult customer. You know, we talked about people don't want to be sold, last week. We deal with subject matters that just transcend all industries. So please tell them that there is a network on internet radio, Blog Talk Radio, or iTunes called the Sales Professional Network, where they can come together and really get their answers met in terms of, what we have to do out there as sales professionals and the challenges and obstacles that we have to jump over. And we even talk about, of course, solutions to those issues too as well. So again, that's every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Don't miss our show next week, May 22nd. And I want to thank everybody. Again, if you listened to last night's show and you came back, and I certainly appreciate it, if you came back to listen to my thoughts, I say thank you for coming back to tonight's show too as well. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for listening to us tonight, and have a great rest of your evening.